Hi guys, and welcome back to another review. This time around I'm bringing you the KZ Sonata. This is currently, you could say, the flagship IM for KZ, an all BA affair, and an IM that when it was announced once again generated a whole bunch of controversy. People threw tantrums, oh, 28 drivers and this and that. Well, if you know KZ and if you know how they usually announce their IMs, and not only KZ, a lot of other brands do this, they announce their IMs many times by the total number of drivers used in the left and the right. So the 28 drivers are actually left and right side combined. In reality, we are talking 14 drivers per side, and in reality, what they've only added is two more 31736 ultra high frequency drivers or BAs to the equation. The rest is exactly the same. Okay, it's using the same shell. The Sonata uses the same shell as the As24 Pro, as the As24, which I've also got here. It's also got still the same tuning switches, which basically the 1 and 2 affect the bass, and 3 and 4 affect the high frequencies in increments of 1 dB. And like I said, it's the drivers inside, or drivers that we've seen being used already before. It uses a single 22955 for the bass, which is a nice it's a nice bass driver. It's a bass driver which is very competent, way more competent than many people give it credit for. It then has two 29 689s handling the mids, another 30019 handling the mid to high frequencies, and then it's got 10 pieces of 31736s entering handling the ultra highs. Those 31736s are actually dual drivers in one. So it's not, you won't find physically 10 separate drivers. They are in pairs of two. Okay. That configuration is basically the same configuration as we had in the As24 Pro, and that we had as well in the As24. So this is basically what KZ have done here, is what they've done as well with their single DDs, is they've created a formula and then improved upon that formula in every version that comes out. As I said, it's got well, let me just briefly take you through the well, the package, because it is the most expensive IM that KZ has launched to date. There's a standard non-tuning switches version, and there's the tuning version, which is the one that I have here. The prices are 149 and 159, if I'm not mistaken, and that price difference or price jump to the As24, which was 110 and 114, if I'm not mistaken, or 118, if I'm not mistaken. That price jump owes itself to, first of all, the usage of the nicer cable that KZ offers. This cable is actually quite nice. I've also got it here on the Hydro. It's the fact that they've used or given us a nice case, okay, and we've got some decent tips, the usual KZ star tips, and then some foams, and the tips actually work quite well. The reality is this, if you've never really tried star tips, they actually will surprise you, and you have a nice trick which you actually can flip them around, and they still perform very well. So nothing really that we can criticize in that aspect. Obviously, for the sake of this comparison, what I've done is I've gone and used 07s in all of them, so that there would be a more fair, a more just comparison between all the IMs. Anyway, so that's basically the accessories. It's a nice accessory package. I guess based on the accessories alone, you can justify this price increase. Again, people were screaming and shouting, oh my god, a KZ at $160, oh my god, oh my god. Guys, that's normal. If you want KZ to improve, if you want KZ to make something better, they have to push up the prices, because let's face it, they've used the approach of being cheap and people just complain all the time. And the reality is their product is decent. It is decent. There are the occasional lemons, but for the majority of the times, the product is decent and has been decent over the last 2 years. Okay, they've got a number of very competent IMs. The latest KZ-PRX, the planar, a phenomenal IM. You way better than all of the previous versions of the planars. Okay, the latest Saga, the single DD. I still haven't got the Zenith, but the Saga, very competent single DD, very competent. We've got the Hydro, the CCA Hydro, and the Rhapsody. Again, two phenomenal hybrids. From KZ itself, or with the KZ nomenclature, we've got the ZS12, the ZS6, and the ZS10 Pro X, all of them again hybrids which are very well done, very well put together, well tuned, and all of this kind of improvement in the tuning has been down to the fact that KZ has been using this kind of Zobel network, this RLC network in their IEMs to manipulate the frequency response. And again, that's something that many other brands do it. KZ had always relied upon, let's call it, a more basic approach by using filters and so on and so forth. And then around the time of the ZVX, DFI, they started using this Zobel network, and the sound of KZ started changing. Obviously, in the BAs, that crossover network has always been a must. It must exist. But again, you see that in every version that comes out, they are improving and are making their sound to become more competent, more mainstream is not the more competitive. Fine, that brings us to again the other issue that sometimes is raised. Why do they continue to using this marketing strategy that they compare themselves to other high-end brands and this and that, like they do with the AS24? They compare it to the themselves to the to the likes of the Anoli VX and so on and so forth. Look, guys, I wish I knew. I guess it's to try and for lack of a better word, try and create some hype, try and get people's attention. Do I think it's necessary? No, honestly, I really don't think it's necessary. I think that if they just used a more normal approach, used a more not only normal but a more modest approach to things, they would probably reap more benefits. Because when you do create this whole marketing thing, saying that your IEM now, and for example in the case of the Sonata, they've gone and compared it again with the Anoli. Why? I mean, I can understand because it's also got a whole bunch of drivers and this and that, but don't just do your thing. Make sure that what you create and what you launch is well done, well built, well tuned, and plays the part, and that's it. That's all that's needed. Let your results speak for themselves, and don't worry about wanting to compare yourselves with other IEMs or with other brands that which have been in the market for I don't know how long and have obtained a reputation and this and that. No point. It's pointless. Anyway, enough ranting. Let's talk about what we want to talk, which is the Sonata and its previous versions, or previous versions leading up to the Sonata. AS24. It was a nice improvement over the previous 12BA IEMs that KZ had. It had all the tuning switches that you could imagine in the world. It had tuning switches for, let me just see if I can focus. It had tuning switches. Oh my god, this thing doesn't want to. Tuning switches for the bass, tuning switches for the mids and the highs. A little bit gimmicky. I ended up using them always with the first bunch of switches all in the one position, so trying to extract as much performance as I possibly can from the bass driver, and then the rest not really emphasizing anything, leaving it as flat as possible, and also by doing that not making the mid sound forward, which you can make the mid sound forward if you start switching around these switches. Overall, what was the sound of the AS24? Well, the AS24, remember this, it was back when it was launched, it was priced at around $80-90. So for somebody that hadn't experienced an all-BA set and that was looking for an all-BA set that was very competent and offered a high level of versatility in terms of its tuning styles, yes, I still say it was a job well done. They achieved their premise, and it sounds really good. Yes, you can play around again. I guess you could play around a little bit with cables to try and get a little bit more, which you won't. But anyway, play around with the tips to try and extract a little bit more. Choose your source carefully. I always preferred and I always prefer the majority of KZs with a warmer sounding sources. It's just, I don't know, it just makes the balance and the performance of the IMs just seem that a little bit more enjoyable. So overall, the performance of the AS24 was a nice and what to be expected from an all-BA set. It had a dry but controlled bass. Mids, upper mids, and treble were in ample quantity and nicely presented. It was more when you started pushing the volume that maybe things just started losing their balance and their whack and got out of a little bit out of context. It didn't perhaps scale in the best of ways and became a little bit slightly unpolished. And I mean, nothing dramatic. Again, let's not forget that what we're talking about here in terms of number of drivers and price and so on, but it was there. So if you chose your tips carefully, if you chose your source carefully, you could mitigate a lot of these little side, slight problems quite well. The tuning, the bass was a more of a gliding style of bass. Like I said, it's got a nice bass. It's no bass monster, but it's got a nice bass. And the focus of any of the AS24 or the Sonata has always been more on the mids and the highs. It's more of a set that is capable of being very resolving. So it's all about the technicalities aspect of things and necessarily the bass. Okay. They came out with the AS24 Pro afterwards, a little bit more expensive, again, a tunable and a non-tunable version possible. And the AS24 Pro changed a little bit the whole approach. They made now a tuck style of bass, kind of like we got in the Hydro and on the Rhapsody, or if you want to go for other IEMs that have that same style, like the Dos Cinco, like the Variations. But the interesting thing is that even though it was tucked, it didn't really lack any mid bass. The mid bass is still there, and in the configuration which I like using it, which is with all the switches up. Okay, and basically what changes is just the bass level. It goes from a more neutral kind of a bass presentation to a more emphasized bass presentation. Let's put it that way. It sounds really good. Obviously, in the more neutral position or with the switches all down, yes, you're getting a sound which is more clinical, more cold, more sterile, more BA like. That BA timbre does come across more, while if you have it all in the all one position where you emphasize the bass, the overall tonality and timbre becomes very much more pleasant, more DD like almost. And the reality is the AS24 is was a very good improvement over the original AS24. They switched only to, or well, they brought it back, the switches down to just one, which is much easier to work on. As you can see there, I've got them all in the one position. All right, and what can I really say? Great bass for BA, great bass, great. It's a start-stop kind of bass. It doesn't linger, it doesn't stay there, reverberate unnecessarily. It's got that cleanliness, that clean impact that BAs can do. Mids, upper mids, treble, all once again in more than ample quantities, and especially the biggest improvement is how it now scales better than the original AS24. You can now push the volume. Oops, this thing is not focusing. You can now push the volume and everything just increases in a more uniform way across the whole frequency range. The sound is more open. It's a more hi-fi sound. Over here on the AS24, you almost got the sensation that the sound was kind of sometimes a little bit closed in, a little bit small venue. Okay, obviously I'm talking about with the settings that I use, which is the first bunch of switches all in the one position, the second bunch all zero, and that I believe still is the better option, because if you start playing around with the mids and the highs with the switches, it just makes it less elegant. Okay, on the AS24 Pro, you either have a more sterile cold presentation, which still, in my opinion, even in that setting, which is all the switches down, it is still as good, if not better, than the AS24. But when you put it in the all up position where you're boosting the bass and you kind of, well, they say you bringing down the mids and the treble. I don't really think it's like that, but anyway, you know, the overall sound that comes out of the AS24 is on a different league. It's on the AS24 Pro, sorry. It's on a different league to the original AS24. Different league. Better across the whole board, more genre versatile. It scales better. Bass is more, it's cleaner. There's better bass quality. The quantity is, I would say as well, basically about the same, but it's the quality of the bass which has become much better. Mids, upper mids, everything. It is a far superior IEM than the AS24. Okay. Now, okay, so we have the AS24. Should we go buy the AS24 Pro? Let's forget another. Well, if you haven't bought any one of them, then definitely this is the one to go for. Obviously, okay. I mean, that's the reality. Do you have the AS24 now? Should I sell it and go get this? Honestly, I don't think so. You know, not really. You can always kind of try and work around those little small issues with a little bit of EQing if that's your thing. Otherwise, you know, if you have it, if you have the original AS24, I don't see why you would go sell it. Yes, to go and acquire an IM which is superior, but that, you know, the difference, although noticeable and clear, it's not going to make you now go have an IM which is going to just completely destroy the AS24. No, yes, the Pro is a better IM. It plays better. It's more elegant. It's more hi-fi, definitely. But if you have the AS24, I would say you could stick with it for a while. Okay. Anyway, enters now the Sonata. The Sonata, again, a further price jump for what is in essence an AS24 with 2 more BAs. Let's be frank about it. The Sonata is basically an AS24 Pro with 2 more BAs. Okay, 2 more 31736s. What does that then bring to the equation in terms of sound? Well, it brings to the equation a little bit extra more resolution, a little bit more extra detail, twinklies and sparklies, especially in the upper frequencies. And that's where I get a little bit annoyed when I see some people talking about, you know, the AS24 being the more neutral of the 3. Well, it depends on how you're comparing it, because I'll show you now in a minute. If I have this in the 000 and I compare it to that in the 0000, they are basically the same. If I have this in the 1111 and I have this in the 1111, they are basically the same again. So to go and say that this is neutral compared to that, no, I'm sorry, no, I don't agree. Definitely don't agree. If you tell me that depending on the setting, 0s or 1s, depending on how you use it, that you will find the Sonata to be more resolving, that you'll find the Sonata to be that little extra still more polished than the Pro, then yes, then we're talking the same language. This is yet more polished than that. The jump from the Sonata to the AS24 Pro is not as significant of a jump as it is from the AS24 Pro to the AS24. So this jump here in terms of overall performance is a noticeable, big, solid jump. Okay, the jump here, not as big, not as solid. The justification for going from this one to this one is you're getting better accessories overall. Okay, so if you want better overall accessories package, then this makes sense. And if your hearing is enabling you to, in the upper frequencies, pick up what this has or what this brings extra to the table, then definitely yes, definitely this will be a purchase that makes sense. Okay, having the AS24, you own an AS24, does it make sense to go buy the Sonata? I would say yes. I would say that if here there's a jump in performance and yes, you notice it, perhaps selling this one to go and fetch the 24 Pro, you know, well, I would say that yes, getting rid of the AS24 and going into the Sonata does make sense, because there's more, there's still that extra amount of jump in performance now in terms of overall. So I would say yes, the transition from the AS24 original is the Sonata, in my opinion. Okay, you own an AS24 Pro, you go fetch a Sonata? No, because the difference is very, very minimal, very minimal. And mind you guys, when I'm talking about these differences, I'm talking about these differences, yes, you will notice them in a normal day-to-day usage, but you will only really get a true notion of these differences and an awareness of these differences is when you are listening to them under ideal conditions. Yes, you notice the difference here in terms of the bass because of the way the style of the bass has been done. You notice the difference here in terms of how the upper mids and treble and so on come across, because I would say, this is me now speculating, the quality of the BA drivers being used here is slightly superior than the quality there, or maybe the crossover network has been just that extra more well executed. So there's an improvement here. There is. I'm not going to say there isn't, because there is an improvement. when we are going from the Pro into the Sonata, it's like I said, it's basically the same IM, just it has 2 more BAs. So if your hearing allows it, you will hear it, like I heard, that yes, there is that extra amount of twinklies and sparkles. Otherwise, guys, trust me, bass is basically the same, the mids are the same, the treble is the same. Excuse me, sorry, my apologies. Everything, it's a very, very equal kind of sound. The difference is that the Sonata is more polished, it's more elegant, it's more mature in the way that it does everything. So you're listening to, let's say, Vanessa Fernandez, Here But I'm Gone. You listen to either one of them, you listen to that song on either one of these two, the Pro or the Sonata, and it sounds amazing. But you will notice that the Sonata just does it that little extra more elegantly. You notice to Shape of My Heart by Sting, the same situation. You will notice that just does it that extra little bit more polished. If you want me to quantify it in terms of performance in percentage, 5-10%, difficult to say, guys. You'll notice it. You will notice it. Where you will notice that bigger jump in performance definitely is from the As24, the original, to the Pro, or from the As24 to the Sonata. There the difference is very noticeable, very, very noticeable, okay? Let me see here, what else? It's On from George Duke, phenomenal, it sounds amazing. I mean, the Sonata, you know, for an all BA set, much like the Pro, they sound highly musical, which is something that for an all BA set to be able to do is not easy, because you get that associated BA timbre and tonality. So you know, you can tell a well executed or well equalized, and by equalized I mean a well properly executed crossover on an all BA set to one that is not an all BA set, or that is not a well executed all BA set. You can tell that by how that sound comes across. When the crossover network being used in an all BA set is of poor quality, you notice straight away the shortcomings of the BAs. You notice straight away the harshness, that metallicness, that zing that the BAs have a tendency of having, especially when it's cheaper units. When that crossover network has been done properly, which is the case here of the Sonata and the As24 Pro, you notice that the sound becomes that more elegant. Like I said, I know I'm repeating my word, but it just has that more DD-ish like kind of presentation, and above all, everything sounds as one driver. While on the As24, there are occasions where you will see, okay, this is coming from the bass BA, and this is coming from the mid BA, and this is coming from the BAs for the highs. On these two, the coherence, the marriage between all of the drivers has been very well attained, very, very well done. You know, again, the Sonata maybe just that extra little bit more, just that. Look, it's minimal, trust me. Okay, so as a recap, or a final recap for the Sonata, very nicely done set, without a question, the best all BA set that KZ has done, without question. I can, if you guys want, I can compare the Sonata then with some other all BA sets, just for you guys to have an idea how it stacks up to other all BA sets. And I can tell you that from my brief listening and some brief comparisons that I did, it stacks up quite nicely. It does. It's not on the level of, for example, a Duno SA6 Mark II. It's not on the level of a Butastur. It's not on the level of a Neon Pro. But for an IM that costs 150 price point, and if you compare it to other IMs of all BAs costing about the same thing, and for example, one of them that comes to mind is the CVJ Kumo. The CVJ Kumo is a very nicely done set that if you get the right switch setting and if you get the right tip, you will be very impressed by the overall performance of the Kumo. because again it is able to have that coherence between all the drivers done in a very mature, very upscale manner that you don't expect for a cheaper all-BA set. It's a set that, yes, it is more expensive than the Sonata, but it also is as well accessorized as a Sonata, and we talk about $180 give or take. Sometimes the price comes down, and I think that the CVJ Kumo is probably the biggest competitor that the Sonata has. It has got dual 22955s, so you notice that the bass is a little bit more present. This is more, I would say, cleaner in the upper frequencies, upper mids and treble. It's cleaner than the Kumo. This one a little bit more sterile in the lower frequencies, where the Kumo kind of. But like I said, guys, if you want me to do those comparisons in more detail, I don't want to drag myself and talk too much about it now. I can definitely do it. So, what else did I bring here to just give you a quick idea of how the Sonata stacks up? I brought here the CCA Hydro, which is their flagship hybrid. It uses 8 31736s for the ultra high frequencies. It uses 8mm for the mids, for the low mid, for the mid bass and for the mids, and then it uses a 7mm XUN driver for the lower frequencies. And I've got here the Saga, both the balanced and the bass version. Look, obviously these two, by nature of having DDs, well, these three, the Saga and the Hydro, by nature of having a DD in the bass, it gives a different tonality. Now, comparing first here the Hydro with the Sonata, you notice that the Sonata is a little bit more resolving. There's a little bit more detailed retrieval, a little bit more resolution. Overall, just that extra little bit amount of more technical capability, and that's where the Sonata shines, okay? But in terms of the musical side of things, it doesn't have the warm timbre and tonality that the Hydro is able to give us. So not only do we have mids being handled by a DD, which again that helps with mitigate some of that BA timbre and so on, which usually sometimes is a problem, which in the Sonata really it isn't. But we have a DD handling the lowest frequencies, which again just gives us very agreeable timbre and tonality. It makes the overall sound that comes out of the BAs in the higher frequencies just sound a little bit more warmer, a little bit more smoother. Both are highly competent, and I would say it's not really one is better than the other, because they are complements to each other. That's the reality. As for the Saga, I mean, the level of performance that you're getting from this linear drive single DD, this latest driver that they have, is pretty impressive. I mean, that's the reality, and the versatility of the driver and what it can do from being a bass monster in the dawn to being a highly resolving driver in the case of the Library X is commendable. Obviously, yes, you notice that this has got better, the Sonata does have better technicalities. It's a more technical orientated set, and I'm going to focus on the Saga more on the balanced version. But in terms of the overall timbre and the tonality, again, I have to say that I prefer the timbre and tonality of the Saga, and it's just down to the fact that it's got that DD doing the magic there. But not detracting anything from the Sonata. The reality is this: in terms of all BA sets from KZ, the Sonata is without question the one that has been able to achieve or tick the most right boxes, in my opinion. That balance that they've been able to get from bass to mids, mids to upper mids to treble has been very well obtained. You can have both a set which is highly resolving, if that means at the cost of being highly kind of, I wouldn't say boring. It will be a delight for the technical freaks, but it will be a sterile set without any life. Okay, to a set that once you bump up the bass, it does do at least my music genres enough justice, and does convey enough energy to them, that only when I really step into something like the Hydro or the Saga do I see that those two do it just a little bit extra more better. That's not really good English, but they do it just a little bit better because of the virtue of the fact that they have that physicality associated to the driver performing the lower frequencies that a BA just cannot do it. Yes, there are BAs, really good BAs that can do that, but we're talking, hundreds of dollars, multiple thousands of dollars. But that's not the case here. We're talking about a I'm not going to say budget, because obviously $150 is not budget, but in the reality of BA sets, this is a budget set, okay, at least with this amount of drivers, and in that aspect, the Sonata is a really good IM. It is a really good IM. It's like I said, and I'll repeat myself again now, it's the best KZ or BA set they've done, and it's probably the all BA set that does make the most sense once you start equating all the other variables, price, build quality, all the things. You start bringing other IMs into the equation, high senior T4, SoundRhyme SR4, DT600 from Audio Sense. All those sets are very good. All those sets are highly capable, but the one that ultimately kind of does start ticking the most boxes, or will tick the most boxes for a wider variety of people, I think will still be the Sonata, or the As24 Pro, by that matter, actually. Although, like I said, I mean something like the high senior, the T4, it's a phenomenal set, or something like the Bravery from C Audio. That's a phenomenal set, especially when you consider it's all only 4 BAs. Now, is it does it justify its price? It's almost double the price of the Sonata. I don't think so. So in conclusion, guys, just chill, just relax. Don't start throwing tantrums and go, oh no, I'm not gonna buy any KZ because KZ this, KZ that, blah 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 blah. Listen to the stuff first, okay? And once you've listened to it, then you make a proper judgment of what the IEM is about. Don't start throwing opinions and notions and this and that when you don't know what you're talking about, okay? If you haven't listened to it. And that applies to any IEM, all right? Any IEM. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, to those that as well said certain things about the neutrality of the Sonata being the most neutral set, well, I'm going to show you the graphs now next, and then you take your own conclusions. All right? Anyway, guys, you take care. Hi, guys, and welcome now to the graph section here for the KZ Sonata. Okay, I'm going to start by showing you the AS24 in the setting that I personally preferred. Okay, and we'll go from there. So this is the AS24 in the setting that I like, which is with the bass slightly boosted and then leaving the mids, upper mids and treble all alone. I'm using KBR 07 tips with all of them, so that the results are the same. When you take this point here of 100 and see where it corresponds to about 1.8 kilohertz. There's not much energy above that. The overall sound is a tendentially warmer sound, even if the focus of the whole presentation is of more mid presentation and more more vocal focused, but it's a warmer style of presentation. The bass has got a nice gliding bass, and overall, look, it's like I said earlier, the AS24 was the best in terms of an all BA set from KZ at the time it came out. The tuning switches allowed for a high level of versatility, so you could get a whole bunch of different types of sounds out of it. And it just was the way that it lost its composure slightly once you started pushing the volume. That was maybe its biggest downfall. But look, guys, that's me basically nitpicking and trying to find a fault. Because, I mean, at $80 or whatever that it was when it was launched, you can't criticize it that much. Anyway, then they came out with the AS24 Pro. This is the AS24. Everything is normalized at 1K, by the way. The AS24 Pro was in all the zero setting, all the switches in the zero settings. As you can see, yes, bass is in a tuck style. There's a bass boost of around 5 dBs, give or take, 5-6 dBs. A pin again, which is significantly higher. We're talking about 11 dBs of pin gain, but it peaks at about 3. There's, this area here doesn't make it too forward. It's detailed, it's clean, and then because it loses energy past that peak as well, it also helps just to make the whole presentation a very detailed presentation that scales very nicely and sounds significantly more mature and significantly more polished than the presentation of the As24 original. I can, if you want, I can just, for the sake of, let me just make this 500 hertz. If you want me, if you prefer me to normalize it at 500 hertz, I can do that. And even in this configuration, okay, where there's a significant difference in the bass, I would still take the As24 Pro over the As24. But again, I will repeat what I said earlier. There is a difference in sound. There is an improvement in sound, which is very noticeable. But whether or not I would sell one to go and fetch the Pro automatically, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Yeah. The As24 Pro with all the switches up, which is how I like listening to it, is this one, normalized at 500, as you can see. And let me just take away the original. Guys, from 400 hertz up, it's the same. It is exactly the same. What changes is the bass level. And by changing the bass level, you change how that then comes across and is perceived by your ears and brain. 100 hertz again corresponds to about 2 kilohertz, which is better than the original As24, and the overall sound that you get is a warmer, more musical, slightly less technical presentation. Sounds absolutely phenomenal in this manner. Okay, now let's leave the As24 Pro with all the switches down and now put the KZ Sonata with all the switches down and get, oh wow, it's the same thing. It is exactly the same thing. This is a little bit of a coupler related issue here with the tip being large. The difference is here because you have those two extra BAs. So how on earth I can hear people say that this is more neutral or this graph's neutral compared to the As24 Pro? I don't know, because guys, it's there, okay? And now I will take away this. I'll put the As24 Pro with all the switches up, and I'll put the KZ Sonata with all the switches up as well. And wouldn't you know it, it's exactly the same thing. Actually, the KZ Sonata with all the switches down, with all the switches down and with all the switches up, it's the same thing, guys. It is the same thing. This difference that is here is so, I couldn't pick up on it. I couldn't. What I could pick up is a difference on the bass, definitely, and the Sonata with the bass boost sounds phenomenal. Look at that 100 hertz. Just got that little peak here above from like 2.2 to about 4K. You got a little bit extra, but it sounds really, really good. And where you see the difference between this and the As24 Pro, like I was saying, is it's not here, it's not up to 3K, it's then here. You notice that there's a little bit more air, a little bit more twinklies and sparklies, a little bit more sensation of space, a little bit more maybe slightly improved imaging. That's where you see the difference. And when you put all three together, the As24, the original, okay, and you put the As24 Pro and you put the the KZ Sonata, guys, there's not huge differences. As you can see, there's not huge differences. What you will notice between the original As24 and the Sonata is, although the As24 does graph like having a lot of energy up top there, the reality is it doesn't, you don't perceive this energy here as you do on the Sonata. The Sonata, it's noticeable on the As24 Pro, although not as present, because you can see it's down here. You can see it's down there past 10K. It's noticeable that there's energy there. On the original As24, not so. But the Sonata just sounds phenomenal in this setting. Honestly, it sounds phenomenal. Again, I will say, yes, the focus on any of these all BA sets from KZ is a focus on being mid vocal centric sets. Right? All right. Now let's put here the Saga, the balanced version, so that you guys can see how that stacks up. Okay, and let me just align the two of them. I'm going to align it here at 500 hertz. There we go. Um, you know, this, you would think that the bass is similar, but no, it's a single DD. It's got that DD vibe, that DD tonality. It's just got a nicer, more musical, warmer bass presentation. As for the rest, for a single DD, it's phenomenal. I mean, peaks at over 3K, about 3.4K, and it drops off nicely, really well executed, mids, upper mids, and treble, but it's not on the same level as the BAs that are present in the Sonata that are highly resolving, highly capable technically, okay? And then finally, comparing here the Sonata with the Hydro. Again, in the setting that I like using the Hydro, which is the 1100 setting. You can see that the Hydro still has got graphically more treble extension past 10K, which doesn't in reality translate to being a noticeable, because the way that the bass comes from behind kind of, I wouldn't say smothers or camouflages, but it just confers a different tonality to that whole area there. Bass is not as big as you'd think here. In terms of the bass quality, it is a better bass quality than the Sonata. The bass quantity may be just a smidge more bass quantity, but you mustn't forget it's a 7mm driver. It's the Hydro in this configuration, which is the 1100, just sounds really, really musical. There's a very high level of coherency between all of the drivers. It sounds like one single driver, and it sounds just amazing. Honestly, it sounds amazing. I would actually like to see an updated Hydro, if you want to call it that way, but using this new generation driver, the 10mm, the generation driver, and I think that would actually be a very impressive hybrid set. And that's it, guys. I mean, that's in a nutshell the KZ Sonata. Without question, the best KZ All-BA set to date, without question. That's not even an argument that we can have. Yes, if you choose the setting with all the switches down, it is going to be more technically capable, but it's going to be a little bit more sterile. If you use the settings with the bass being enhanced, then it's a lot of fun. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of fun. It's got about 10 dBs of bass boost. It just sounds really, really good. It just sounds very, very good, especially considering it's a single 22955. It's got a nice full bass. It's quick. It doesn't have that physicality that, yes, we do find in something like the Hydro or even the Saga, because it's a DD. But you know, it doesn't leave you wanting more as well. It's really well done. And compared to the As24 Pro in the same settings of 111, guys, yes, the graph. I mean, I don't have to, you know, explain myself too much. Just less treble up past 10K. That's the biggest and most noticeable difference. And compared finally then to the As24, the original, yes, you notice that there's a big difference in terms of the sound, even though graphically you wouldn't think, but there is a big difference. Okay, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.